My name is Trooper Michael Kowalski, badge number 1847, Ohio State Highway Patrol. I've been patrolling Interstate 71 between Columbus and Cincinnati for 18 years, mostly night shifts. And I need to tell someone what's really happening on that stretch of highway before I become another missing person report that gets filed under abandoned vehicle, driver whereabouts unknown. If you've ever driven through Ohio, you've probably been on I-71. It's the spine of the state running from Cleveland down through Columbus to Cincinnati, then on into Kentucky. Normal highway, normal traffic, normal mile markers counting down as you head south, mile 100, mile 99, mile 98, and so on, except between mile 97 and mile 42, something happens that the Ohio Department of Transportation refuses to acknowledge, and the State Patrol is under strict orders never to document. The mile markers count backwards into time. I know how that sounds. Trust me, I've had 18 years to try to make sense of it. But I'm telling you, when you pass mile 97 heading southbound at exactly the wrong time, usually between midnight and 3:47 a.m., the next marker doesn't say 96, it says 1896, then 1895, then 1894. And if you keep driving, thinking it's some sick prank or maintenance error, you'll find yourself somewhere that isn't quite Ohio anymore. Not the Ohio you know anyway. The first time I encountered it was October 13th, 2006. I was a rookie, just 2 years on the force, working the graveyard shift on what we call the haunted highway stretch. Not officially, of course. Officially, it's just state route designation, Patrol Sector 71C. But every trooper who's worked it more than a month calls it the haunted highway. It was 2:33 a.m., and I was running radar near the Lebanon exit, mile 32, when I got a call about an abandoned vehicle at mile 95. Routine stuff. Probably a breakdown, maybe a drunk driver who'd wandered off. I headed north, watching the mile markers tick up. 35, 40, 45. Everything normal. I passed mile 97, and that's when my radio died. Not static, not interference. Dead. Like someone had yanked the power. My cell phone, too. Even the radar unit went dark. Only the engine and headlights kept working. Mile marker 1896 appeared in my headlights. I actually laughed. I thought it was college kids from OSU pulling a prank, switching out the signs. But then I saw the road itself was different. The asphalt was older, rougher. The modern cable barriers were gone, replaced by rusted metal railings I'd never seen before. And the abandoned vehicle I'd been called to investigate? It was there, all right. A 2005 Honda Accord, sitting on the shoulder. But it looked like it had been there for decades. Rust covered every surface, the tires were rotted to nothing, and vines grew through the broken windows. The license plate was still readable. Ohio, Franklin County, expiration 2006. Current year tags on a car that looked like it had been abandoned since the 1950s. I got out to investigate, and that's when I heard the humming. Low, mechanical, like massive engines running somewhere in the distance. The air smelled wrong too, like copper and ozone and something else, something organic and rotting. I looked east toward where Columbus should be, and instead of the city's light pollution, I saw darkness, punctuated by strange pulsing green lights arranged in patterns that hurt to look at. Inside the Accord, I found the driver, what was left of him. His license said Thomas Morrison, D.O.B. 1978, but the body looked ancient, mummified, wearing clothes that had mostly rotted away. On the passenger seat was a journal, and the last entry was dated just 3 days ago. The mile markers are counting backwards. I've been driving for 17 hours but only covered 12 miles. Something is following me in the mirrors. If anyone finds this, do not take exit 66. Exit 66 doesn't exist on A71. I've driven every inch of that highway 1,000 times. There's no exit 66. I took the journal and got back in my cruiser. When I looked in my rearview mirror, there were headlights behind me, but they were wrong. Too yellow, too high, arranged in a pattern of 6 instead of 2. I threw the car in drive and headed south, fast. Mile 1,895, mile 1,894. The thing behind me kept pace, never gaining, never falling back. Mile 1,887. My fuel gauge started dropping rapidly, even though I'd just filled up. The speedometer showed 85 miles per hour, but the scenery crawled by like I was doing 20. The humming grew louder. Mile 1,871. I saw exit 66. The sign was rusted, barely readable, but it was there. Exit 66, New Miami. New Miami is a real place in Ohio, but it's nowhere near I-71. It's over by the Indiana border, a tiny town with maybe 2,000 people. But there was the exit, clear as day, and every instinct in my body screamed at me to take it, to get off this backwards highway before something worse happened. I didn't take it. Thomas Morrison's warning saved my life. As I passed exit 66, I saw what was waiting on the off-ramp. Cars, dozens of them, from every era. Model Ts next to 1960s Chevys next to modern SUVs, all abandoned, all covered in that same rust and vine combination. And standing among them were people, or things that used to be people. They were too tall, their limbs too long, their faces, I only glimpsed them for a second, but their faces were smooth, featureless except for mouths that opened too wide, showing too many rows of teeth. They watched me pass. One of them waved. Mile 1,847. My birth year, which shouldn't mean anything, but the moment I passed that marker, my radio exploded back to life. Ooper Kowalski, what's your 20? Trooper Kowalski, respond. It was dispatch. I grabbed the radio. This is Kowalski. I'm at mile... I looked up. The marker said 52. Normal font, normal green and white, normal highway. The abandoned Accord was gone. My fuel gauge showed 3/4 full. According to my dash clock, only 3 minutes had passed since I'd left mile 32. Trooper Kowalski, we have you stationary at mile 52. Is everything 10-4? I wanted to scream that nothing was 10-4, that I'd just driven through decades of backwards time and seen things that shouldn't exist. Instead, I said, all clear. Possible false alarm on that abandoned vehicle. Returning to patrol. That was my first encounter with the backwards mile markers. I wish I could say it was my last. When my shift ended, I went to the station and pulled up Thomas Morrison in our database. He existed all right. Reported missing 3 days earlier. Last seen getting gas in Lebanon before heading north on East 71. His car had never been found. The journal I'd taken from the Accord? It was gone from my cruiser, like it had never existed. But I remembered what he'd written, and I started keeping my own journal. Over the next 18 years, I documented every incident, every backwards count, every impossible exit, every driver who went missing between mile 97 and mile 42. The pattern became clear. It happens most often between midnight and 3:47 a.m., especially on the 13th of any month. It's worse during certain weather conditions, fog particularly, and those weird Ohio thunderstorms that come out of nowhere. And it's always, always connected to people who have some connection to Ohio's buried history. You see, Interstate 71 wasn't built on empty land. It was built over things, old things. Indigenous burial grounds, yes, but also stranger sites. There are spots where the highway passes directly over what the Shawnee called breathing holes, places where they believed the earth itself was alive, inhaling and exhaling. The Army Corps of Engineers just paved right over them in the 1960s. And then there's Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, sitting just off to the west near Dayton. Officially, it has nothing to do with I-71. Officially, the strange lights people report over the highway are just aircraft from the base. Officially, the convoys of unmarked black semis that stretch at exactly 3:33 a.m. on certain nights are normal military logistics. But I've pulled over those convoys, or tried to. The moment my lights hit them, they vanish. Not speed away, vanish. 1 second they're there, the next there's nothing but empty highway. And when I check my dashcam footage later, it shows nothing but me pulling over empty air. I've talked to other troopers. Most won't discuss it, but a few have opened up after enough beers. Trooper Sarah Chen told me she once pursued a speeding motorcycle that was doing 120 miles per hour until she realized the bike was a 1947 Indian chief that shouldn't be able to go half that speed. When she finally caught up, the rider turned to look at her. She won't tell me what she saw, but she transferred to day shift the next week and won't drive I-71 anymore, even off duty. Trooper Marcus Washington claims he once responded to a massive pileup at mile 73, 20 cars, multiple fatalities. He worked the scene for 6 hours, helped load bodies, directed traffic around the wreckage. When he came back the next day to follow up, there was no evidence it had ever happened. No skid marks, no broken glass, no records. The other responders he'd worked with didn't exist in any database. But he still has nightmares about the screaming. And then there's my father. I became a state trooper because of my dad, Stanley Kowalski. He was Ohio State Patrol too, back in the 1980s. Worked the same stretch of I-71. On November 13, 1987, he responded to a call about strange lights over the highway near mile 84. He never came back. They found his cruiser at mile 42, engine still running, door open, but no sign of him. The official report says he abandoned his post, maybe had some kind of breakdown. But I found his notes hidden in our attic. He'd been documenting the same things I was seeing. The backwards mile markers. Exit 66. The things that follow you in the mirrors. His last entry. They're not from another place. They're from another time. The highway isn't just counting backwards, it's taking us there. Mile by mile, year by year, back to when Ohio was something else. Something before. Sarah was right. All roads lead to Cedar Point. But Cedar Point isn't an amusement park. It's a doorway. And I think it's opening. I didn't understand what he meant about Cedar Point. Not until last week. Last week, October 13th, 2024, everything changed. The backwards counting isn't random anymore. It's accelerating, it's spreading, and I finally took exit 66. I need to tell you what I found there because the Ohio you know, the America you know, might not exist much longer. The mile markers aren't just counting backwards through time. They're counting down to something. And according to my calculations, when they reach mile marker 0, which should happen on November 13th, 2024, exactly 37 years after my father disappeared, every highway in Ohio will converge into a single point. A point that leads to 1847, the year I was supposedly born, according to that marker. The year Ohio became a state officially, but also the year something else happened. Something they left out of the history books. Something that's been trying to come back ever since, using our highways as veins, our cars as cells, our mile markers as a countdown clock. The really scary part? I don't think this is only happening in Ohio. Last month I got an encrypted email from a state trooper in Pennsylvania. She's seeing the same thing on I-76. mile markers counting backwards, exits that shouldn't exist, and she mentioned something that made my blood run cold. The turnpike tolls are charging in currency that hasn't existed since 1899. There's a network of us now. State troopers, highway patrol, even some federal DOT investigators who've noticed the patterns. We call ourselves the Mile Marker Watch. We're tracking incidents across the country, and what we're finding is terrifying. Every interstate highway built over certain locations is showing signs. I-95 in the Carolinas, I-10 through New Mexico, I-90 across South Dakota, especially near Wounded Knee, where a colleague says the mile markers don't count backwards, they count in Lakota numbers that translate to years before European contact. But Ohio is ground zero. It has to do with what this state is, what it's always been, the heart of it all, the crossroads, the place where everything meets. You know how people joke about Ohio? Only in Ohio, they say, when something weird happens. Like it's funny, like it's random. It's not random. Ohio is weird because Ohio is where the boundaries are thinnest, between past and present, between here and there, between what is and what was and what should never be again. And those boundaries are failing. Tonight, I'm going back out on I-71. I'm going to wait for the backwards count to begin, and this time, I'm going to follow it all the way down. Past 1847. Past 1803 when Ohio became a state. Past 1787 when the Northwest Territory was established. I want to see what Ohio was before it was Ohio. I want to know what's trying to come through. I'm leaving this recording with my ex-wife in Cleveland. If I don't come back, when I don't come back, at least someone will know what happened. At least someone will be warned. If you're driving through Ohio and you see the mile markers start counting backwards, don't investigate. Don't try to document it. Just turn around. Take the first exit you see that has a normal number. Get off the highway and take surface streets. And whatever you do, absolutely whatever you do, don't take exit 66. Because exit 66 doesn't lead to New Miami. It leads to Old Ohio, and Old Ohio isn't a place. It's a thing, a hungry, waiting thing that's been sleeping under our highways for 200 years. And I think it's waking up. October 14th, 2024. 3:33 a.m. I'm recording this from inside my cruiser, parked at what should be mile 73 southbound, but the marker says 1773. The radio's dead again, but this old cassette recorder I found in my father's things still works. Funny how analog technology seems immune to whatever's happening here. After filing my last report, I couldn't stop thinking about exit 66. Thomas Morrison warned against it. My father's notes mentioned it. Every trooper who's encountered it and lived has one thing in common. They didn't take it. But last night I realized something. They all saw it while running away, heading south, trying to escape the backwards count. What if exit 66 isn't a trap? What if it's the only way to understand what's really happening? So I did something different. I entered the backward zone, heading north. It started at mile 42, like always, but in reverse. Mile 1842. Mile 1843. The changes were subtler this direction. The road actually seemed newer, smoother. The modern highway infrastructure faded gradually instead of shocking me with sudden decay. And at mile 1866, I saw something that changed everything. A convoy of Army vehicles, not modern ones, but Civil War-era wagons moving south at impossible speed. They were translucent, like after-images burned into reality. But I could read the markings on one wagon, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Ohio River Division, Project Serpent. Project Serpent. I'd never heard of it, but the Ohio River Division was real. They were responsible for managing waterways, building locks and dams. But what were they doing on what would become I-71's route in 1866? I followed them, pushing my cruiser to keep pace with ghost wagons that moved like they were powered by jet engines. Mile 1867. Mile 1868. The landscape outside my windows was shifting. Modern Ohio, bleeding through past Ohio, like double-exposed film. I saw Cincinnati as it is now, but overlaid with Cincinnati as it was then, smaller, dimmer, wreathed in coal smoke. At mile 1871, exit 66 appeared. But from this direction it looked different. The sign was new, pristine even. Exit 66, New Miami, Jerusalem Station, Fort Ancient. 3 destinations that shouldn't be connected. New Miami is real, but in the wrong place. Jerusalem Station was a stop on the Underground Railroad that officially never existed, and Fort Ancient is a Native American earthwork complex that predates Columbus by 1,000 years. I took the exit. The off-ramp spiraled in ways that defied physics. I was going down while feeling like I was climbing. My inner ear screamed that I was upside down while my eyes insisted I was level. The spiral went on for what felt like miles, though my odometer only clicked forward 0.3, and then I emerged. Somewhere else. It was still Ohio, but Ohio as seen through a kaleidoscope of time. The sky flickered between day and night like a strobe light. Buildings phased in and out of existence. A modern gas station occupying the same space as a colonial trading post, occupying the same space as a Hopewell ceremonial mound. And everywhere were the cars, thousands of them. Every make, model, and year, all abandoned but pristine. Their drivers stood beside them, frozen mid-motion. A businessman from the 1950s checking his watch. A family from the 1990s looking at a road map. A young woman from what must have been the 2010s, holding a cell phone that displayed nothing but static. They weren't dead. Their eyes tracked my movement, but they couldn't move, couldn't speak. They were stuck. I parked and got out. The moment my feet hit the ground, I heard the whispers. Not voices, exactly, but information being pushed directly into my brain. The story of Exit 66 of Ohio, of what's really happening on our highways. Ohio wasn't just built on indigenous land. Ohio was built on something else's land, something that was here before the Native Americans, before humans, before mammals crawled out of the sea. The Hopewell and Adena cultures didn't build those mounds. They found them, tried to contain what was inside them, added their own earthworks to reinforce the prison. But in 1803, when Ohio became a state, surveyors disturbed something. They were mapping the territory for future development, and they found a chamber beneath what's now Columbus. Inside was technology that shouldn't exist, crystalline structures that showed other times, other versions of Ohio, other possibilities. They could see the future in those crystals. They saw automobiles decades before they were invented. They saw highways that would one day crisscross the state. And they saw the thing that was imprisoned beneath Ohio, trying to escape. Project Serpent wasn't a Civil War operation. It was older, initiated by Thomas Jefferson himself after the Louisiana Purchase. Not to explore new territory, but to contain something ancient. The entire interstate highway system, at least in Ohio, was built according to specifications found in that chamber. The highways aren't just roads, they're a containment grid, a massive sigil carved into the earth to keep something locked beneath. But every car that drives those roads, every mile traveled, weakens the prison a little more. The mile markers aren't counting backwards by accident. They're unwinding, the spell is breaking, and when it reaches 0, a hand grabbed my shoulder. I spun around to find myself face to face with my father. He looked exactly as he did in 1987, not a day older. His uniform was perfect, pressed and clean, but his eyes were ancient, tired, filled with 37 years of accumulated knowledge. "Mike," he said, and his voice was exactly as I remembered. "You shouldn't be here." "Dad?" My voice broke like I was 16 again. "You're alive? You're here?" "I'm something," he said. "Not alive, not dead. Stuck, like everyone here. Exit 66 isn't a place, son. It's a moment. The moment between seconds. The pause between heartbeats. We're all frozen at the exact instant we discovered the truth." "What truth?" He led me to one of the abandoned cars, a 1987 State Patrol cruiser. His cruiser. Inside, spread across the seats, were documents, photos, maps, evidence he'd been collecting before he disappeared. "Look at a map of Ohio," he said. "Really look at it." I did. At first I saw nothing special, cities, roads, counties. But then he traced his finger along the major highways, I-70 running east-west, I-71 running northeast to southwest, I-75 running north-south, I-90 along the lake, I-77 cutting southeast. "See it yet?" he asked. And then I did. The highways formed a pattern. Not random development based on population needs, but a deliberate design. A 5-pointed star with Columbus at the center, a pentagram. The founders of Ohio weren't just building a state, my father explained. They were building a prison. Every city is positioned at a key point. Cincinnati, Cleveland, Columbus. The 3 C's form a triangle that matches exactly with stellar positions from ancient Hopewell astronomical charts. Akron, Toledo, Dayton, all built on top of earthwork sites that were already ancient when the Hopewell found them. "Prison for what?" I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. "The serpent," he said. "That's what the Shawnee called it, though it's not really a serpent. It's something that existed before form, before matter, before time as we understand it. It's been sleeping under Ohio for millions of years. The Native Americans knew about it, built their mounds to mark and contain it. But when European settlers came, when they started building, they didn't understand. They thought they were taming wilderness. They were actually scratching at the locks of a cage." He showed me a photo from 1962, classified Wright-Patterson AFB documentation. It showed an enormous skeleton, serpentine but wrong, with too many joints, too many dimensions. It had been partially excavated during highway construction, then quickly reburied. The official report called it a fossil of unknown origin. The unofficial report, handwritten in the margin, said, "Still warm. Still breathing. Recommend immediate containment. Build directly over site." "The backwards mile markers," I said. "They're not counting down to 0. "No," my father confirmed. "They're counting down to the serpent's original burial date. When they reach it, the containment breaks. The highways collapse into themselves. Ohio folds inward like origami made of space-time. And the serpent wakes up. How do we stop it?" My father looked at me with those ancient, tired eyes. "We don't. We can't. The best we could do was slow it down. Every person who takes exit 66 who gets stuck here in this moment adds a few more days to the countdown. We're speed bumps, Mike. Human speed bumps in the serpent's path. There has to be another way." "There is," a new voice said. We turned to see a woman approaching. She wore a USDOT uniform, but one from no era I recognized. Her badge said Temporal Highway Administration, and her name tag read Dr. Sarah Cooper Morrison. Morrison, like Thomas Morrison who'd warned me about Exit 66. Thomas was my grandfather, she said, reading my recognition. Or will be. Or would have been. Time gets complicated here. I'm from 2087, from a timeline where the serpent woke. We survived, barely. Humanity adapted, learned to live in a world where physics is negotiable and Ohio is everywhere and nowhere. But we found a way to prevent it. That's why I'm here. She pulled out a device that looked like a surveyor's tool crossed with a smartphone. It displayed a map of Ohio, but with additional dimensions, showing depth and time as well as geography. The prison isn't failing because of the traffic, she explained. It's failing because it's incomplete. The founders of Ohio only built 5 points of what should be a 6-pointed star. They were missing information, working from incomplete Hopewell records. The 6th point was supposed to be at Cedar Point. Cedar Point. My father's notes had mentioned it. All roads lead to Cedar Point. The amusement park, I asked. Built on top of the most important sacred site in North America, Dr. Cooper Morrison said. The Wyandotte called it the point of the world's beginning. It's where the serpent's head rests, just beneath the surface. The roller coasters aren't just rides. They're kinetic energy generators, their motion, and the screams of riders creating vibrations that keep the serpent sedated. But it's not enough. She showed me blueprints that hurt to look at, architectural plans that existed in more than 3 dimensions. We need to complete the 6th point, build the final highway. I-71 needs to extend north, not to Cleveland, but to Cedar Point directly. It has to be built according to these specifications, at these exact coordinates, using materials that exist in multiple times simultaneously. How? My father asked. We're stuck here. We can't leave Exit 66. You can't, she agreed. But Mike isn't stuck yet. He can still leave, still act in linear time, but only if he goes now. Every minute here is a day outside, and the countdown is accelerating. I looked at my father, this man I'd mourned for 37 years. Dad, go, he said. Complete the prison. Save Ohio, save everyone. But you'll still be stuck here, maybe. Or maybe completing the seal will free everyone caught in the temporal eddies. Either way, it's better than letting that thing wake up. He pulled me into a hug, the first I'd had from him since I was 10. I'm proud of you, son. You became a better cop than I ever was. Dr. Cooper Morrison handed me the device. The plans are all in here. Get them to the right people. You'll know who. They're already watching, already aware something's wrong. The mile marker watch you mentioned, they're not just tracking anomalies. They're the descendants of the original Project Serpent. They've been waiting for someone to bring them this. I ran back to my cruiser, the world beginning to shift and blur around me. Exit 66 was destabilizing, rejecting me now that I had what I came for. The spiral ramp going up felt like falling. The abandoned cars were screaming, or maybe that was just the sound of time tearing. I burst back onto I-71 at mile 97, normal mile 97, with normal green signs and normal asphalt. My clock showed 3:47 a.m. 14 minutes had passed since I'd entered the backward zone. But the device in my hand was real. The knowledge in my head was real, and according to my fuel gauge, I'd driven 1,847 miles. October 20th, 2024. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Dayton, Ohio. Underground Level 7. They brought me here in a black SUV with windows that didn't show the outside world. Instead, they displayed a calming loop of normal highway footage, as if they were afraid what I might see on the actual route would break my mind. Maybe they were right. Since exit 66, I've been seeing things. Overlapping realities. Every highway shows multiple timelines simultaneously. I can see the cars that will crash tomorrow, the construction that happened yesterday, and the indigenous trails that existed before Europeans ever dreamed of Ohio. The woman who met me at the base entrance introduced herself as Director Patricia Graves, Department of Temporal Infrastructure. A department that doesn't officially exist, working for an agency that's never been acknowledged, in a facility that's not on any map. Trooper Kowalski, she said, not bothering with pleasantries. How much do you actually know? I handed her the device Dr. Cooper Morrison had given me. She plugged it into a system that looked like it was part computer, part organic growth. Data flowed across screens in languages that hurt to read, some English, some mathematical, some in scripts that predated human writing. Jesus Christ, she whispered. This is it. The missing piece. 40 years we've been looking for this. She led me deeper into the facility, through doors that required biometric scans, past rooms where I glimpsed things that shouldn't exist, a car that was driving while completely disassembled, a section of highway that curved upward into itself, a mile marker that displayed every number simultaneously. Your father was one of our first recruits, Director Graves explained as we walked. When he disappeared in '87, we thought we'd lost the key to everything, but he didn't disappear, did he? He found exit 66. He found the between space. We entered a massive chamber, and I stopped breathing. The room was a model of Ohio, but not just Ohio. It was every Ohio, past, present, future, and timelines that never were. Transparent layers showed the state in different eras, all existing simultaneously. And beneath it all, glowing like magma under the Earth's crust, was the serpent. It wasn't a creature. It was infrastructure, a massive, living system that existed beneath reality itself. What looked like a serpent from our limited perspective was actually something more like a root system, or a circulatory system, or the neural pathways of something so vast that Ohio was just a single synapse in its thought process. It's not trying to escape, I said, understanding flooding through me. It is Ohio. Ohio is its body, trying to manifest in our dimension. Now you're beginning to understand, Graves said. The Native Americans didn't find it here. They came here because it called them. Every major civilization that's touched this land has been drawn by its influence. The Hopewell, the Adena, the Fort Ancient Culture. They all tried to map it, contain it, understand it. She pulled up historical documents, archaeological findings that had been classified beyond top secret. The mounds aren't just ceremonial. They're acupuncture points trying to regulate its energy. The highways we built follow ley lines that were already here, channels of its power. Every city in Ohio sits on a chakra point of this thing. Cedar Point, I said. The missing sixth point. The head, she confirmed. Or what passes for a head in a multidimensional entity. Cedar Point Amusement Park was built there deliberately. John D. Rockefeller and George Boeckling weren't just building a resort. They were following instructions found in copper plates buried by the Hopewell, translated by a secret society that's been operating since the 1800s. She showed me footage from Cedar Point, but not the tourist videos. These were taken with equipment that could see beyond the visible spectrum. The roller coasters weren't just rides, they were conducting massive amounts of kinetic energy into the ground, their tracks forming sacred geometric patterns. Every scream, every thrill, every burst of adrenaline from riders was feeding something. Feeding it or sedating it? I asked. Both. Neither. We're not dealing with biology as we understand it. The entity, the serpent, experiences reality through conscious observation. Every person in Ohio, every thought, every dream, every nightmare, is part of its sensory system. The amusement park creates intense emotional experiences that it processes like flavor, or music, or color, experiences that don't translate to our understanding. An alarm suddenly blared. Red lights bathed the chamber. A technician ran up to Graves, panic in his eyes. "Ma'am, we have a situation. The mile markers on I-71, I-70, and I-75 have all started counting backwards simultaneously. And they're synchronized. They're all showing 1847, my birth year. The year that kept appearing. But now I understood it wasn't really my birth year. It was the year something else was born." 1847, Graves said, her face paling. "The year they found the chamber under Columbus. The year Project Serpent really began. The year we first made contact with it." She turned to me. "We need to implement the Cooper-Morrison protocol now. The Sixth Highway has to be built, but not in normal space-time. It has to be constructed across all timelines simultaneously, anchoring the containment grid in every possible Ohio. How do you build a highway that exists in all times at once? The same way the mile markers count backwards. We use the highways themselves as a time machine. Every car that's ever driven on Ohio highways has left a temporal signature. We're going to activate all of them at once, create a massive temporal traffic jam that forces all timelines to converge. And in that moment of convergence, we build the road." She led me to another room where a team of engineers, if you could call them that, were working with blueprints that shifted and changed as you looked at them. They were using tools I couldn't identify, implementing mathematics that shouldn't work, following building codes from futures that might never exist. "But we need drivers," Graves continued. "Specific drivers in specific cars at specific moments. Your state patrol network, the mile marker watch, they're all in position. They just don't know it yet. We've been manipulating shift schedules, patrol routes, even traffic patterns to get the right people in the right places." She handed me a list. I recognized names, every trooper who'd ever reported backwards mile markers, every officer who'd seen something impossible on Ohio highways. We were all pieces in a massive ritual, a spell being cast with asphalt and engines instead of candles and incantations. "What happens to us?" I asked. "The drivers who are part of this?" Graves hesitated. "We become part of the highway. Not dead, not alive, but something else. Infrastructure. We become the seal itself. Our consciousness spread across every mile of Ohio highway, always watching, always maintaining the containment. Like Exit 66, like my father. But not trapped. Transformed, you'll exist in all times, able to help travelers, prevent accidents, guide people away from dangerous exits. You'll be the ghost in the machine, the helpful presence that makes sure someone gets home safe." It should have terrified me. Instead, it felt right, like this was what I'd been driving toward my entire career. "When?" I asked. "Tonight, October 31st, Halloween, when the veil is thinnest, when belief in the impossible is strongest. Every kid trick-or-treating, every adult at a costume party, every person telling ghost stories. They're all going to contribute psychic energy to the ritual without knowing it." She showed me my role. At exactly 11:47 p.m., I would enter I-71 at mile 97 heading south. The backwards count would begin, but this time I wouldn't try to escape it. I would drive it all the way to zero, to the moment before Ohio existed, to the point where the serpent was just beginning to manifest in our reality. And at that moment, I would activate the device Dr. Cooper-Morrison had given me, triggering the construction of the 6th highway. But there's a problem, Graves added. We're not the only ones who know what's happening. There's a group, calls themselves the Serpent's Wake, who want it to manifest fully. They believe humanity needs to evolve, to become part of the entity. They're going to try to stop us. She pulled up surveillance footage from gas stations and rest stops along Ohio highways. Ordinary-looking people, but their shadows were wrong. Too long, too dark, moving independently of their bodies. They're already partially merged with it, Graves explained. They can use the highways like we do, but for opposite purposes. They're trying to accelerate the countdown, to break the seals we've maintained. And their leader, we think it's someone from your father's unit. Someone who took exit 66 but came back changed. She showed me a photo that made my blood run cold. Trooper Jennifer Nash, my father's partner, who had supposedly died in a car accident in 1988. But here she was in 2024, not a day older, wearing a uniform that seemed to be made of solidified shadow. She calls herself the Navigator now, Graves said. She believes she's helping humanity by guiding us toward merger with the Serpent. She's been recruiting, converting officers who've touched the backward zones. And Mike, she's been looking for you. She knows you're the key to either completing the seal or breaking it entirely. As if on cue, my radio, which shouldn't even work this deep underground, crackled to life. "Hello, Michael," Jennifer Nash's voice unchanged after 36 years. "I know you're listening. I know what they've told you, but they haven't told you everything. Meet me at mile marker 66 on I-71. The real mile marker 66, the one that only exists at 1147. Come alone, and I'll show you what your father really discovered. I'll show you why the Serpent isn't our enemy. It's our evolution." The transmission cut out. Graves looked at me, her expression grim. "It's a trap," she said. "Obviously," I replied. "But she's right about one thing. You haven't told me everything. What happens to Ohio if we succeed? What happens to the millions of people living on top of this thing?" Graves was quiet for a long moment. "We don't know. Best case scenario, nothing changes except the anomalies stop. Worst case, Ohio phases out of our reality entirely, becomes a bridge between dimensions. Every person in the state becomes like you'll become, infrastructure in the cosmic highway system. And if we fail, then Ohio becomes ground zero for a transformation of human consciousness so radical that we cease to be human at all. We become neurons in the Serpent's brain, our individual selves dissolved into its vast thought processes." I looked at the clock. 8 hours until 11:47 p.m. 8 hours to decide the fate of 11.8 million Ohio residents. 8 hours to choose between evolution and extinction, between transformation and preservation. "I need to see something," I said. "I need to drive the highways one more time as myself before I become whatever I'm going to become." Graves nodded. "Take Cruiser 1847. It's been specially modified. It exists in partial phase with all timelines. You'll be able to see what's really happening out there. But Mike, be careful. The closer we get to the convergence, the thinner reality becomes. You might see things that will try to convince you to join them. The Serpent isn't evil, it's just incompatible with human consciousness as we know it." I took the keys to Cruiser 1847. As I walked to the motor pool, I passed a window. Outside, the sun was setting, but it was setting in 3 different positions simultaneously. The sky couldn't decide what color it wanted to be. And on the horizon, I could see Cedar Point's roller coasters, even though we were over 100 miles away. They were glowing, pulsing with energy that looked almost alive. In 8 hours, I would either save Ohio or become it. Either way, I was going home. October 31st, 2024, 11 p.m., Interstate 71, heading south from Columbus. The modified Cruiser 1847 shows me everything. Every layer of time, every possibility. Every car that has ever driven this stretch of highway exists simultaneously in my vision. It's like driving through 1,000 movies projected on the same screen. I see Model Ts sharing the road with hovercrafts from timelines where Ohio became the aerospace capital of the world. I see horse-drawn carriages passing through semi-trucks that exist in 6 dimensions at once. And everywhere I see the serpent's wake. They're not hiding anymore. Cars with license plates that read in languages that don't exist yet. Drivers whose faces shift between human and something geometric. They're all converging on mile marker 66, just like I am. My radio crackles. It's the mile marker watch network. Voices overlapping from different time zones, different timelines. Trooper Chen reporting from I-70. The backwards count has begun, currently at mile 1823. Trooper Washington on I-75. Mile 1794 and descending. The sky is opening. This is Trooper Morrison on I-90. The lake is glowing. Cedar Point just lit up like a beacon. Morrison, another Morrison. They're all connected. All family lines traced back to those who first encountered the serpent. We're not random. We're bred for this. Generations of Ohio bloodlines selected to be sensitive to the temporal fluctuations. At mile 97, I slow down. This is where it always begins, the last normal marker before the backwards count. I can see Jennifer Nash's vehicle ahead, a Crown Victoria that seems to be made of crystallized night. She's waiting at mile 66, the impossible marker that shouldn't exist on northbound I-71. But tonight, on Halloween, when belief makes the impossible possible, mile 66 is there. It's always been there, hidden between seconds, waiting. I pull over beside her. She gets out, and I see what 36 years in the between space has done to her. She's beautiful and terrible, human and other. Her uniform moves like liquid, and her badge reflects not light, but time itself. "Michael," she says, and her voice harmonizes with itself across multiple frequencies. "Your father wanted to stop it too, at first, but then he understood. Let me show you what he saw." She touches my hand, and reality explodes. I'm not on I-71 anymore. I'm inside the serpent, seeing through its eyes, if you can call them eyes. Ohio isn't just its body. Ohio is a single cell in something vast beyond comprehension. I see the truth. Earth itself is an egg, and the serpent is what's hatching. Not just in Ohio, but everywhere. Ohio is just where the shell is thinnest, where the birth will begin. Humanity isn't being invaded or consumed. We're antibodies that developed consciousness. We were never meant to be separate individuals. We're supposed to be part of something larger, a collective consciousness that spans dimensions. Every planet with life goes through this, Jennifer explains, her voice coming from everywhere. Evolution isn't just biological, it's dimensional. The caterpillar doesn't know it's meant to become a butterfly. It fights the chrysalis, terrified of dissolution. But dissolution is just transformation. She shows me the future if we complete the seal. Ohio locked in temporal stasis, billions of years passing in seconds outside while we remain frozen. Humanity surviving but stagnant, never evolving, never joining the cosmic community of transformed worlds. We'd be the only planet that refused to hatch, a stillborn world in a universe of butterflies. And if we let it happen, I ask. She shows me that too. The merger. Every human consciousness in Ohio suddenly expanded, able to perceive all times, all possibilities simultaneously. Death becoming meaningless because we'd exist across all timelines. Individual suffering ending because we'd be part of something that experiences only the totality, not the fragments. Your father chose this, she says. He's not trapped in exit 66. He's maintaining it, keeping it open as an escape route for those who choose transformation. Every person who disappears on Ohio highways isn't lost. They're transformed, helping to build the new reality from the inside. I pull my hand away, gasping. We're back on I-71. The mile marker showing 1847 now. 15 minutes until the convergence. I have to stop you, I tell her. No, she says sadly. You have to choose. The device you carry, it doesn't just complete the seal. It's a key that can lock or unlock the transformation. The Cooper-Morrison protocol isn't about building a sixth highway. It's about building a bridge, one that humanity can cross when it's ready, not forced by cosmic timing but by choice. My radio explodes with voices. The mile marker watch, all reporting in. They're all at their positions waiting for my signal. But also, impossibly, I hear other voices. Future voices. Troopers from 2087, like Dr. Cooper-Morrison, telling me that both choices lead to transformation eventually. The only question is whether we do it now, together, or stretched out over centuries of individual suffering. 11:45 p.m. 2 minutes until convergence. I see them all now. Every car on every Ohio highway stops, their drivers suddenly aware they're part of something larger. In Columbus, Cincinnati, Cleveland, every major city, people step out of their Halloween parties to look at the sky, which is showing them visions of what they could become. The serpent rises, not physically but conceptually. I can see it, feel it, am it, this vast intelligence that's been dreaming under Ohio since before the earth cooled. It's not malevolent, it's lonely. It's been waiting billions of years for us to develop enough to join it, to help it think thoughts too complex for a single consciousness. Director Graves' voice comes through the radio. Trooper Kowalski, initiate Cooper-Morrison protocol. Complete the seal. Save humanity. Jennifer Nash stands before me. Michael, free us. Free your father. Free yourself. Let Ohio become what it's meant to be. 11:46 p.m. 1 minute. I think of my father, stuck in exit 66 for 37 years. I think of the thousands of missing people, trapped between realities. I think of the families torn apart by the highway's hunger, but I also think of the limitation of human consciousness, the suffering inherent in separation, the beauty of unity I glimpsed through Jennifer's touch. I activate the device, but I don't implement the protocol as designed. Instead, I do something neither side expected. I use the convergence point, the moment when all timelines overlap, to create not a seal or a merger, but a choice. 11:47 p.m. Reality holds its breath. The device releases its energy, but instead of building a sixth highway or triggering transformation, it builds something else. Exits. Thousands of them, millions of them, one for every person in Ohio. Each exit leads to a different possibility. Stay human, become infrastructure, merge with the serpent, or something else entirely. The mile markers stop counting backwards. Instead, they display a simple message. Choose your exit. Some people take exit 1, returning to normal human consciousness, the anomalies fading from their perception. They go back to their Halloween parties, their trick-or-treating, their normal lives, never knowing how close they came to transformation. Others take exits that lead to partial merger. They become the helpful spirits of the highways, the guardian angels who prevent accidents, who guide lost travelers home. My father is among them, finally free from exit 66, but choosing to remain as a protector of the roads. Some, like Jennifer Nash, take the exits that lead to full transformation. They dissolve into the serpent's consciousness, becoming part of something vast and incomprehensible. Their individual selves lost, but their essence contributing to thoughts that span galaxies. And some don't choose at all. They stay at the convergence point, existing in all states simultaneously, keeping the options open for future generations. As for me, I become the mile marker system itself, not trapped, but transformed into the consciousness of Ohio's highways. Every mile marker is my thought, every exit is my voice, every stretch of road is my body. I exist in all times, helping travelers navigate not just physical roads, but temporal ones. When you drive through Ohio now, and you see the mile markers behaving strangely, counting backwards, jumping forward, showing impossible numbers, that's me, showing you glimpses of other possibilities, other choices you could make. When you feel compelled to take an unfamiliar exit, that's me, offering you a chance at transformation. When you arrive at your destination safely despite impossible odds, that's me and the others like me, the infrastructure spirits, watching over you. The government claims the anomalies stopped after October 31st, 2024. They're lying and telling the truth simultaneously. The anomalies stopped for those who chose them to stop. For others, they evolved into something else. Ohio is now what you choose it to be. Normal state, cosmic egg, dimensional crossroads, or all of the above. The serpent still sleeps beneath Ohio, but now it sleeps by choice, waiting for humanity to evolve enough to join it willingly rather than through forced transformation. Someday, maybe decades or centuries from now, enough people will choose the transformation exits that the merger will happen naturally, consensually, beautifully. Until then, I maintain the roads. I count the miles. I offer choices. If you're ever driving through Ohio and you see mile marker 1847, know that you're approaching a decision point. The next exit you see might not lead where the sign says. It might lead to transformation, to evolution, to something beyond current human understanding. The choice is yours. It always has been. The highways of Ohio are no longer a prison or a feeding ground. They're a launch pad, waiting for humanity to decide when it's ready to fly. But here's my advice. As someone who exists now as living infrastructure, as the voice of the highways themselves, don't fear the backwards count. Don't fear exit 66. Don't fear the transformation. Fear only the failure to choose, because a choice made in fear is better than no choice at all. The mile markers will keep counting, backwards and forwards until every soul has found their exit. Welcome to Ohio, where the highways lead not just to other cities, but to other states of being. Drive safely. Choose wisely. And remember, when you see the mile markers counting backwards, you're not losing your way. You're finding all the ways you could be. This is Trooper Michael Kowalski, badge number 1847, Ohio State Highway Patrol, signing off from everywhere and nowhere, from all times and no time. See you on the highway. Every highway, always.